Good morning. Let's start our Wednesday class with some prayers. Om Guru Brahma, Guru Vishnu, Guru Devo Maheshwaraha, Guru Sakshat Parbrahma, Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Om Bhu Bhuvaswaha, Tatsavitra Varenayam, Bhargo Devasya Dhimahi, Diyo Yo Nah Prachodayat, Asto Ma Satgamya, Tamso Ma Jyotirgamya, Mrityorma Amritam Gamya. Om Sehna Vavtu, Sehna Bhunaktu, Seviryam Karvavahi, Tejasvi Navadhitamastu, Ma Vidvishavahi. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. We often talk about gross body, subtle body, causal body. Sure, we have a fairly good idea, but I wanted to go through the definitions according to the scriptures for these three bodies, because we all have these bodies, so we should know what these are. This is called Shrir Trayam. So these are the bodies. So let's look at the gross body first, and I will recite the verse from the scriptures and then give you the translations, and then we'll go over the details also. Panchikrit Panch Mahabhutai Kritam Sat Karam Janyam Sukh Dukh Adi Bhogayatnam Shariram Asti Jayate Vardhate Viparinamate Apakshiyate Vinashyati Shat Vikar Vat Etat Sathul Shariram. So this is a definition of a Sathul Sharir. Okay, the gross body. So English translation of this verse is that which is made up of the five great elements that have undergone the process of panchikarana, born as a result of the good actions of the past. The counter of experiences like joy, sorrow, etc. And subject to the six modifications, namely to potentially exist, to be born, to grow, to mature, to decay, and to die, is the gross body. It's a pretty elaborate definition of this gross body. So first, he says it's made up of the five great elements: earth, water, fire, air, space. But these five great elements, they have undergone the process of grossification. So process of grossification is called panchikarana. So all five elements, they went through a certain process. So it's almost like a permutation and combination of these five elements that constitute the entire gross world that we perceive. Our body also is part of this world. That's why it's made up of these five gross elements. Sathul Sharir. And this body can be perceived by the five senses, by our own self and by others, both inside and outside. That's why it's called gross. It disintegrates with the time. And definition of that is Sirye Man Tavat Shariram. So at death, the body disintegrates back into the five elements from which it came from. So that's why another name, a Sanskrit name for death is Panchatvam Apuha. So that means it attains to the five elements, this body. So actually the body being part of the five elements is never separate from them. None of the five elements separately or together belong to us. But still we regard our body, combination of these five elements, We think it's me. And anything related to this body, what do we call it? Mine. Me and mine. So he says, etat. Etat means this. The body, like every other object, can be indicated as this body. I, the knower of this, am different from this body. Who knows this? I know this. So sat karam janyam. This body is the result of action done in the past. The human birth is the finest of all the creation. In this birth, we have the choice to evolve or devolve. We can either go up or go down. By discriminating between right and wrong, the real and the unreal, we can attain the supreme truth. But human birth is surely the result of good actions. And the actions which were done in the past, knowing its rarity and uniqueness. Why rarity? Because if you look at even on this earth alone, how many species are there? Human beings are only handful anywhere. So it's a rare and it's unique. We should not waste this precious birth and achieve the purpose for which we gained this body. Then he says, Sukh Dukh Adi Bhog Ayatanam. So this body is the place, it's almost like a counter where we reap our experiences of joy and sorrow through the body. So all those transactions which happen, they are happening through the body. So body is compared to a city with 9 gates. Navdware pure dehi. See, just like traffic passes through the gates, the transactions of life, they happen through the 9 apertures of our body. And we are all familiar with these apertures, our eyes, nose, ears, mouth. Shat vikar vat, that was another term over here, that body undergoes 6 modifications. The number 1 is asti. Asti means potential existence. That means when a mother experiences changes within, and the doctor confirms the presence of the fetus in the mother's womb, that is asti. Then jayate is born. After 9 months, a child emerges from the mother's womb to experience the outer world. Then third is vardhate, grows. And this growing happens with the food which we eat. Body grows initially more height and later the width also. It's like we grow up and we go outside also. Then number 4, we parinamatehe, matures. It attains adolescence and matures and over time attains its peak physical vitality. 5th is apakshiyate. It decays. Slowly the limbs weaken, the hair grays, the skin loosens, and energy is gone down. We can see that how a little child runs and the way an elderly person walks. Apakshiyate. And number 6 is vinashyati, dies. Finally, it disintegrates to totally go back to its constituent elements. We call this death. I, the pure self, am a witness to all the modifications. I, the pure I, is the same throughout life. I am neither born nor do I die with the body. Only out of a false identification do I say I am dying, or I am fat, or I am weak. So knowing that I am different from the body, I need not neglect the body though. It is a vehicle that we use to do all the transactions in this world. That's why this popular saying, Sharira Madhyam Khalu Dharam Sadhanam. It is the temple which houses the pure self within Deho Devalya Prokta. Okay, we got to consider it as a temple. That means we need to keep it clean. Just like we keep our temples clean. So this is personal temple. Without getting too attached to it, or even falsely identifying with it. Okay, so these are the terms used to describe or to define the gross body. Panchikrit panch mahabhutai kritam satkaram janyam sukh dukh adi bhog ayatnam shariram asti jayate vardhate viparinamate apakashiyate vinashati shat vikarvat etat sthula shariram. Okay, so let me read that English translation of this so that you understand that the definition of this. That which is made up of the 5 great elements. Okay, so this Sthula Sharir is made up of the 5 elements. But they have undergone the process of panchikarana, because these great elements individually, when we see, we really cannot identify. Water which we see, which we touch, which we drink, is not a pure water element. It has the other elements in there. Panchikarana has happened. So the same way in our body also. Panchikarana, grossification. Born as a result of good actions. So we are a human being because we did some good actions in the past. Remember that. And in this body, we experience the joy, sorrow, etc. So all the experiences are through this body. And then at the end, he says, subject to the 6 modifications, potentially exist to be born, to grow, to mature, to decay, and to die. Okay, so this is a gross body. And we are familiar with this body of ours. Throughout our life, if you look at it, we spend more time nurturing this body, thinking about this body, worrying about this body, which is a gross body. Sthula Sharir. Now let's look at the second body which we possess, the subtle body. Apanchikrit panch mahabhute kritam sat karam janyam sukh dukh adi bhog sadhanam panch jnana indriyani panch karam indriyani panch pranadaya mana cha ekam buddhi cha ekaha evam saptadash kabhi sah yat tishtati tat suksham shariram. So this is the definition of a suksham sharir. That which is composed of 5 great elements, which have not undergone grossification. See, panchikrit. So gross body is the outcome of the panchikrit. Subtle body has not gone through the panchikaran. Okay. So that which is composed of the 5 great elements, which have not undergone grossification, Again, born of good actions of the past. The instrument for the experience of joy. See, the gross body was the counter of experience. This is the instrument for the experience of joy and sorrow, etc. Constituted of 17 items. Sapt dash ka bhi. Sapt and dash, 17. So constituted of 17 items, namely the 5 sense organs of perception, 5 sense organs of action. So karma indriya and gyan indriya. 5 prana, the mind and the intellect. So altogether, if you add them up, they are 17. He says that is the subtle body. So pervading the gross body is the subtle body, first of all. Pervading means subtler. Subtler the thing, the more pervasive it is. Body can stay here, it's gross, but mind is subtler, it can go into the other side of the globe also. Subtler. So first let's look at panchikrit panch mahabhute kritam. The 5 great elements in their nascent form are called tanmatra. So that means the essence of those. So the entire subtle world is constituted from their permutation and combination. The subtle body, being part of the subtle world, is also made up of these subtle elements. That's what he's trying to tell us. They are called subtle because we cannot perceive them with our senses. That's why they are subtle. I cannot see somebody else's mind, and thank God for that. Or my own with my gross eyes. So gross organs cannot see the subtle part. But I am aware of the thoughts in my mind. That is called a sakshi bhasya. So the subtle body enlivens the gross body. When it leaves the gross body, we say a person is dead or gone. Subtle body is also called the linga sharir. Sat karam janyam. As we said in the for the Sthula sharir, the human birth is the result of the good actions of the past. Punyen punyam, papen papam, abhyam manushya loke. So with the prominence of merits, we gain a heavenly body. With the demerits, what do we get? Animals or lower body. And within the balance of both, we gain a human body. So in both the higher and the lower bodies, our merits or demerits are exhausted, with no new ones being formed. And in the human body, we can harvest a rich crop of merits. We have a full freedom. Whether we want to do punya karam or we want to do the pap karam. But we have gotten this body, human body, because we did do the punya karam. So but now we have the full freedom to go up or to go down. Each one's actions differ. Therefore, our subtle bodies are also different. We have seen even the identical twins. They think differently from each other. Then he says, Bhog sadhanam. It is the mind intellect of the subtle body that actually experiences joys and sorrows, heat and cold. So even though it is through the body, but what really experiences is mind and intellect. The body feels no pain or honor when pricked or garlanded, or hurting and pleasing. It is the mind that recognizes it. See, the book or the notebook or a pen which you hold is unaware that you are holding it because it doesn't have a subtle body. But you are aware that you are holding it. How? Through the subtle body. So through the functioning of your subtle body, you are aware of it. That's why in the deep sleep state, when the mind intellect stops functioning temporarily, there is no experience of the world in the deep sleep, which is called sushupti, if you remember. Then the next term he used to explain the subtle body is a sapta dash kala. The 17 components of the subtle body, as I mentioned earlier, the sense organs of perception, which are five organs of actions, 5 prans, mind and the intellect. So the capacity to perceive and cognize does not lie in the external organs, but rather in something subtler beyond them. Remember that. So it's not the physical eyes which are seeing, but there is a power behind it. And this is what he's talking about over here. The external organ is only a part of the gross body. So eye is a part of the gross body. Ears are the part of the gross body. But by itself, they cannot perceive or respond to any stimuli. For example, even the blind person has eyes, but no sight. So instrument is there, but the power is not there, which is subtle. So the faculty of sight that lies behind the eye is the actual sense organ. Okay. So it's almost like when a person is dead, eyes are there, ears are there, nose is there, but the power has left. The subtle body has left. And the prans are the physiological functions without which the body cannot remain alive. They supply energy to the gross and the subtle bodies. And the mind is the seat of the emotions, perceptions, capacity of volition, etc. And the intellect, because out of those 17, there's a mind and the intellect also. So not just the prans and the sense organs or the gyanendriya, karamendriya, but the mind and the intellect also. So mind is the seat of the emotions, perceptions, capacity of volition. The intellect, what does intellect do? It recognizes, it observes, it judges, it analyzes, it imagines, then it decides. That's how much intellect does. So mind and intellect prompt the body into action. So that's why they say the subtle body is the driver of this vehicle, the cause for all the incomplete or the successful ventures. So this is a subtle body. Let me read the definition, the actual translation of the definition. See if you understand all of it. That which is composed of 5 great elements which have not undergone grossification. Okay, so they have not become gross, they are still subtle. Born of good actions of the past, the instrument for the experience of joy, sorrow, etc., constituted of 17 items, namely the 5 sense organs of perception, 5 sense organs of action, 5 prana, the mind and the intellect is the subtle body. And 5 prana, we are all familiar with. He did not mention what those 5 prans are, but we know that. Prans, man, vyan, udan, right? So apan, those 5. So this is the subtle body or the suksham sharir. Now, the third body, the causal. This is the body where most of the people are very confused. Because physical body we can see, we can feel. Subtle body also we know that we have a mind and intellect and all those prans, and if we pay a little bit attention, we know. But to understand the causal body, we need to dig a little deeper. Because this is also our body, causal body. And in order to become one with God, to attain the ultimate goal of human life, whether you call it moksha or nirvana or mukti or freedom, liberation, whatever, it is after letting go of all these bodies. Causal body also. So that's why it's very important to understand what causal body is. निर्वाच्य है, अनादि अविद्या रूपम शरीर दुवस्य है, कारण मात्रम सत स्वरूप अज्ञानम निर्विकल्प रूपम यद अस्ति तत् कारण शरीरम. That which is hard to explain, cannot explain, inexplicable. It's like I can't even talk about it. Beginningless, in the form of ignorance, the sole cause of the two bodies. So two bodies means the gross and the subtle. Ignorant of one's own true nature, free from duality, is the causal body. So these are the pointers given to us to understand what this causal body is. First of all, this causal body is the subtlest of the three bodies. There's a gross, then comes the subtle, and then comes the subtlest, and subtlest body is called the causal body. And it pervades the other two. Okay? So pervasive. It's not made up of matter like the other two. You remember the gross body was a panchikarana. The subtle body was a panchikarana, but still the elements were there. This one is not made up of matter at all. Then he says it's avidya rupam. It is of the nature of ignorance, avidya. And ignorance has no shape, size, or quality. It is always to an object. See, like if somebody says, I'm ignorant of computers, but by itself, it is objectless. So this ignorance, the avidya, which we was talking about, I am the locus of ignorance, like I am ignorant. Ignorance cannot exist without me. I exist, therefore I can be ignorant. Then he says, nirvachyam. You cannot talk about it. Because it doesn't have any shape, size, or quality. It cannot be described by words or grasped by the mind. See, physical body, we could talk about it. It has all these limbs. It has all these parts. But causal body doesn't. Ignorance implies lack of knowledge. And it does not actually have any existence. But still you cannot say it doesn't exist. Why? Because we experience its effects. It manifests as the gross and the subtle bodies. Because if there was no ignorance, we will not have a gross body. If there's no ignorance, we won't have a subtle body. So effect we see. And we also experience the sorrow caused by ignorance. So being nothing, it still does a great deal. That's why they say this power cannot be explained. Then it says anadi. Ignorance is beginningless. Because if we say ignorance began at a particular time, then there should have been either a void. So that, but we know that ignorance cannot emerge from nothing. Or we can say there was a knowledge, but ignorance cannot come from knowledge. Nobody can point out a beginning for ignorance, and that's why they say it's beginningless. Sharir dvayasya karan matram. Not knowing my true nature, and that is ignorance, I mistakenly identify with the finite, feel a sense of incompleteness, desire to fulfill myself. That's why I run after the objects, thinking that they would make me happy. Just like that rope and snake analogy. Ignorance of the rope caused the notion of the snake, which gave the fear into the mind and prompted the body to run away. So over here, the ignorance about who I am created this body and created this mind. So ignorance is at the root of all my actions, they say. Because we all know actions give rise to results. Because there's an action and there's a result of that. And that result, either we enjoy or we suffer. And what happens from there? Enjoyment or the suffering, there is always some kind of a tendency left behind. And that tendency is called vasana. And that vasana again prompt to future desires, actions and results. Hence, we can say that inherent tendencies prompt actions. That's why I said ignorance at the root of all my actions. And we have already seen the two bodies, gross and subtle, they are the result of the actions. And these tendencies or the vasanas are the one which are called the causal body. It is the cause for both the bodies, gross and the subtle. Then he says, Sat Savarup Agyanam. I know I exist. I may not know my own true nature, is existence, consciousness, bliss. Because I think I'm the body, the doer of the actions and the enjoyers of the results. It is strange that we know so much about the world, but we do not know the knower. And this is what the Sat Savrupa Gyanam is. And all the more ironic that it's not me alone, everybody. So widespread. Nirvikalpa rupam. Ignorance is homogeneous. It has no difference. It has no dualities of the knower and the known. So ignorance cannot be known. Only the knowledge dispels it. See, my ignorance cannot be different than your ignorance. The object of the ignorance may differ, but the ignorance remains the same. So there are degrees in knowledge. There are no degrees in ignorance. So being beyond thought, which is called vikalpa, it's a nirvikalpam, without thoughts. So how do we destroy this ignorance, which is the cause of the other two bodies? Knowledge. Knowledge. So Even though it's anadi, but it's not eternal. The self being beyond birth and death is eternal, not the ignorance. Hence, I am different from the causal body. So once we know our true nature, then I experience myself as different from all the three bodies. Through the sadhana, this is what we need to get to. I am not the gross body, I am not the subtle body, and I am not the causal body either. Eternal is only me, the atman. Once we have that kind of a knowledge, this all drops down. So it's almost like in a daylight, no darkness. So when we have this kind of a light of our atma shining, then all these bodies don't have any existence. So let me go back to the definition again so that you understand that which cannot be explained, which is beginningless, in the form of ignorance, the sole cause of the two bodies, gross and the subtle, ignorant of one's own true nature, free from duality, is the causal body. Okay, so we got to think a little deeper to understand this causal body, because it is so subtle, so pervasive, so powerful. So I'm sure you have a lot of questions. Let's end this and then we'll go through the question answer. Om Purnamada Purnam Idam Purnat Purnam Udachyate Purnase Purnamadaya Purnam Eva Visheshyate. Om Shanti 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 Om.